Art journal pages don't have to be complicated or difficult. In fact, they can be super simple and super effective. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how. Hi, I'm Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. Welcome. So I'm going to start this background very simply by using one stencil. This one's called Leafy Texture. And I am simply going to put paint through this stencil. This is a 12 by 12 stencil. Get a stencil that has an all over pattern that completely covers whatever size art journal page you're working on. Now, here I've made a mistake. I didn't gesso the page first, and that's why the paint is having a difficult time adhering. It's soaking into the paint. So to compensate for that, I am ending up giving it a couple layers of paint using more paint. So do yourself a favor, gesso the page first and you'll save yourself all the problems that I have. So back to this page. So we are using one stencil, an all over pattern, and that is going to give us the majority of our background. I'm putting the paint through the stencil with a makeup sponge, and it couldn't be more simple. Now, when you're choosing colors, don't think you need to use a lot of colors. For this background, for this page, I'm using a limited color palette. I am using red, yellow, and blue. Those are the primary colors. And of course, I know when they blend, the yellow and the red is going to make an orange, the yellow and blue are going to make a green, and the red and the blue are going to make a purple. You can see there how when I put the paint on, it's really dry. It's a raw surface. So again, reminder, put gesso on. That will help my paints blend a little bit more. I would just have an easier go at putting the paint down. As it is, I have to go back. I have to blend it a little bit more, work a little bit harder. So again, keeping it simple, do those basics, like give it a good primer with gesso. Now, you don't have to buy brand name gesso. I buy economy gesso from an art store. That's what I use. It's a great price point. I don't need anything fancy for how I am using gesso as that basic primer. So I've started with blue at the top, went yellow, got that green in between, added red, got orange in between, and then add purple, add blue at the top. So it kind of finishes it off. I had this idea to do these bright, bold colors and this stencil. And in a minute, we will have the reveal. Now, you got to give it time. I did not know what I wanted to do with this background. So it sat in my studio on my desk for a couple weeks. And then we had gone to a restaurant and they had these hexagon coasters. She saw me putting the two into my purse and she asked if I wanted some more. And I said, absolutely. I use them for my mixed media art. I love the shape and I thought, oh, I could do something with them. So they were sitting there as well on top of this background. And then I decided, why don't I combine them? So I'm just using this as a tracer template because I like the shape. You can use circles, squares, triangles. You can make a random shape, whatever. It doesn't really matter. We're just adding one more. We're kind of building up our focal image here, breaking up the background, adding some interest. So I'm just tracing around them and I'm just using a pen because I wanted you to see it and show up. You could use a Stabilo all pencil, what have you. And I think I'm going to trace it here and have just this rough same border all the way around. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this and where this is going. I'm just making one decision at a time and enjoying the process. Let's keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. You only need to do the one step. So here I'm adding some contrast. I've got a lot of contrast with that white and the bold colors. So I'm adding black. That's also adding in contrast, which makes for interesting pages. So I am just started with a round brush and then I went to a filbert, which I fit better. So, experiment with brushes. Which one works better for what you're doing? So I'm just going around all these hexagon shapes, adding contrast. Again, couldn't be simpler. Remember, I'm keeping the color scheme red, white, and blue, or red, green, and blue, or red, yellow, and blue. Sorry. With the mix of colors, adding contrast, black and white. So there we have what I think is pretty much the background. Now I'm edging the page and I realize again, because I didn't gesso it, I'm getting a problem. And I want when I shade around these things, I want it to shade properly. I want it to not discolor and get all gray any more than it already had. So I'm giving it a coat of clear gesso. So if I had done this at the beginning, I would have used white gesso on the whole page and then done the stenciling. But because I've already got color here, I'm putting clear gesso on, goes on cloudy, dries perfectly clear. And this is the Crafters Workshop brand, which I love. So now I'm shading around each of these hexagon shapes. And because I put that gesso on, turned that into a completely non-porous surface, it is working out the way my shading should. When you're doing art journaling and mixed media, you just have to respond to what's happening and fix the problems as they come. So I'm using an angle brush, my floating acrylic technique for shading. I'll link the video where I teach that process. Now, because I didn't put the gesso, because before I shaded, some of this got a little bit darker, smudged, dulled, if you will, than I would have preferred. So I'm going to have to deal with that down the road. So I'm liking how this is looking. We've taken the stencil, which was very simple to apply the paint, and then just added interest by putting these shapes on there. Now I made a cutout, a window template of this because I want to stamp on these shapes. And I wanted to grab my script stamp, but I challenged myself to use something else. So this is a texture stamp from the Songs of the Sea from Stamperia. And I'm just stamping some black on. And the reason I'm stamping in black is because those colors got faded because I made that mistake by not putting the gesso on. If you like them without the stamping on it, or you want different stamping, go for it. There's nothing you must have the exact same stamp. You want a stamp that is fine, that's smaller in scale. And I'm putting that on each of those hexagon or partial hexagon shapes. Could I have done this stamping before I drew on the hexagon shapes? Yes. But at that time, I didn't know that that's where I was going to go or that I would want to add this detail. So then I found these cute little penguins sitting there, went on Pinterest, found some different sayings, typed them out in some different fonts and sizes, and then I'm going to addition them. Before I decide on the exact composition with my three penguins and whatever sentiment, I am going to cut out these elements and play with them. I can leave this in this rectangular shape, or I can cut it down and remove some of that white. Now, here's the thing. There is no absolutely right composition. Move it around, play with it, and make a decision. So I'm putting this here with the three penguins, and I decide, what if I change the orientation and put it this way? How does that look? And I like that a lot more. So that's what I chose to do. But I reiterate, there is no absolutely right answer. But don't overthink it. Then I decide maybe I want the chill out bigger. I had it made it bigger. I sampled that. Nope, I liked it better when the sentiment was all in the same size. But I did pick a sentiment with a very bold font. It needed that to stand out on this bright, bold, high contrast page. So now I'm going to glue down all these elements with my fluid matte medium. It's Liquitex brand. I tried this early on when I started creating and I loved it. I have never really tried any other matte medium. I've done Mod Podge. Their matte finish doesn't go completely matte, and I don't like the smell. So I prefer the Liquitex Fluid Matte Medium. So now I'm going to add colors, but I'm not deviating from my color scheme. So this hexagon over here has no red in it, so I'm painting the elements of his scarf and earmuffs and bringing that into there. The middle one has no blue. It's got the yellow, orange, and red, so I'm making this one blue. And I'm just using acrylic paint that has been slightly thinned down and a small brush. And the last one, well, you guess it, there's no yellow there, so I'm putting yellow in the elements of the scarf and earmuffs. I do add a little bit of white to the yellow. My yellows tend to be a little bit more translucent, and I just wanted better coverage, so I just added a little bit of white paint or gesso. I mix the yellow and the red to get orange, and I paint his beak and his feet. And I'm loving how this has turned out. Like I said at the beginning, I had no idea where it would go. I just wanted to have fun. I'm shading around the sentiment. To make it stand out a little bit more. And then I decide to grab my fine line applicator bottle. This is white paint that just regular Liquitex Basics white paint that I've thinned down, trial and error to get the right consistency. And I'm just doing dashes around my hexagons. This is adding a little contrast, brightening up the page, and it's a really fun, fine detail to add. You could just do dots, you could do straight lines, you could do sketchy lines, you can make X's. Sky's the limit. I love my fine line applicator bottles. I hesitated for a long time before buying them. Do I really need it? But I love having them available in black, white, and gold. I use them regularly. They do not get clogged. It's just a win all the way around. As I'm looking at this, I'm thinking I could do the same thing with the penguin and make a Christmas ornament with it. So I can take this idea and do a mixed media project with it. There's our finished page. So when in doubt, chill out. It doesn't have to be complicated. Simple can look beautiful. I hope you give this a try and you have fun. Until next time, go get creative.